Thanks, Eleanor. We'll also be giving you a little bit of an idea of the services and the financial incentives that are available to help you expand your business into Victoria. By way of introductions, I'm joined today by my colleagues in Melbourne. I have Craig Harrison, our Executive Director for Investment with Invest Victoria, and Fran Curlin, our Senior Manager with Creative Victoria as well. I'm also delighted to have Caroline Pitcher with us, one super busy lady, but Caroline is the CEO of Film Victoria. That's the Victorian state government agency that provides strategic leadership and assists with Victoria's screen sector. So Caroline will be moderating a panel for us today, and we'll be joined by Greg Palstra, Sledgehammer's Melbourne General Manager, and also Tom Crago, who's the CEO for Keywords Melbourne. They'll be discussing why Melbourne is an ideal location to set up a studio and how the Victorian government helped them with their strategic objectives. Finally, at the end of our session today, we'd love to hear from you, and there'll be an opportunity for a Q&A session. Please feel free to add any questions that you may have in the Q&A session as we go, or there'll also be ample time at the end for discussion as well. But first, let's kick off with a short video about Victoria and why Melbourne is Australia's digital games capital. Thanks, Cassie. Excellent. Thanks, Cassie. So Melbourne is known as the tech capital of Australia. There are more than 170 game studios here in Melbourne, representing more than half of the studios in Australia. A few great digital games companies that call Melbourne home include Electronic Arts Fire Monkeys, Sledgehammer Games, Cocodrillo Dog, and Keywords Australia. Melbourne is also an excellent location for partnerships. So for example, Nickelodeon, Pixar, Disney, and Warner Brothers have partnered with Playside Studios to produce branded mobile games in Victoria. It's also worth noting that Melbourne has been the birthplace of many digital games hallmarks, such as the FMod platform, an internationally recognized sound effects and authoring tool used by Bethesda, Disney, Activision, Tencent, and many others, and Zero Latency, the free roaming VR system. So headquartered in Melbourne, Zero Latency has now global operations, and its VR experiences are found in over 20 countries across the world. Melbourne's tech ecosystem is not just built on great talent, but on the city's ability to promote and sustain high retention rates of our excellent talent. As the fastest growing city in Australia, Melbourne is renowned as a place where people want to live and work. And for the last 7 out of the last 9 years, Melbourne has been ranked as the most livable city in the world. From a business perspective, Melbourne is the ideal location for a follow the sun model. So the time zone bridges the gap of American and European business hours, and Melbourne also shares time zones with the Asia Pacific region. Thanks, Cassie. So as I mentioned, Melbourne is known as a global digital game city. We understand that a strong tech ecosystem relies on a number of pillars in order to be successful. It needs strong industry expertise, a pipeline of new talent and a skilled workforce, an adaptive government committed to economic development, and a dedicated space to bring people together to create and share great ideas, amongst many other factors. Melbourne is also home to the Interactive Games and Entertainment Association. This well-connected peak body is made up of members from Ubisoft, Sony, Activision, Electronic Arts, Xbox, Nintendo, as well as many other digital games companies. And as I mentioned before, one of the major reasons why so many digital games companies call Melbourne home is because of our concentration of talent with creative and technical skills, as well as industry experience. There are 20 institutions currently delivering games-related courses in Melbourne, including 5 specialist game design institutes. Melbourne has over 1,000 students graduating with the digital skills every year, more than Melbourne and more than Singapore. So in addition, Melbourne has a great number of digital games professionals as well, with many more than other global cities, such as Sydney, Helsinki, Montreal, and Barcelona. And the cost of salaries is up to 40% cheaper than hiring in any of these cities, as well as in San Francisco or New York. Melbourne loves its digital game events and hosts the Melbourne Esports Open, which is Australia's biggest celebration of esports, PAX Australia, the only PAX held outside of the US, and the city's International Games Week, which is in its 7th year. Fran will be giving you a little more detail on this bit in a little bit. By way of creating opportunities to bring Victoria's games ecosystem together, Melbourne built the Arcade, which is Australia's first collaborative workspace created specifically for games developers. We are also home to Fortress Melbourne, the ultimate sports games entertainment venue, and another first for Australia. The Victorian government is committed to nurturing the continued growth of our digital games sector through financial incentive offerings and the complementary services we offer to help companies with market entry. To help walk us through some of these offerings, I'd like to hand over to Craig Harrison, our Executive Director at Invest Victoria, to give you an overview of the financial incentives available to digital game studios.
Thank you, Charmaine, and hi everyone. So Charmaine says we can support your investment in a number of ways, including financial support. The Australian Commonwealth Government's digital games tax offset, commencing 1st of July 2022, will make Australia a highly competitive destination and create unparalleled business opportunities for companies keen to expand into the Asia-Pacific region. So recognise this opportunity window, the Victorian Government acknowledges there are opportunities to attract new companies into this existing dynamic ecosystem. And so we are able to offer incentives to help you establish yourself here. So we have a new 3-year strategy to accelerate your investment into Melbourne. What we want from you is to commit to establishing your studio, your operation here before the end of June 2022. And in return, we offer incentives based on the number of jobs we employ in Victoria across a 3-year period. The total value of support depends on the number and skills of those jobs. So we have an allocation of $6 million of support over 3 years, and that's specifically to support businesses looking at the offset. Thank you. And then, so in terms of the federal level, as I mentioned, commencing the 1st of July 2022, the Australian government is offering a 30% refundable tax offset. This is offered by the government in addition, the federal government, in addition to Invest Victoria's Jobs Incentive and Film Victoria's Victorian Screen Incentive for digital games. And I'll hand over to Caroline shortly to expand on this. The team responsible within the Australian government is still undertaking industry consultation to build a robust framework. So more details of the qualifying games expenditure is yet to be finalised for that. What I can say is a company must spend a minimum of $500,000 to qualify. That's Australian dollars. In addition to the rebate, it's also worth mentioning that the federal government has committed to potentially fast-tracking global talent visas, as well as providing temporary activity visas for studios that want to relocate key staff for up to 18 months. The Victorian government is a dedicated branch that will support you with visa inquiries and application. And I think we have representatives online today. If at Q&A you want to delve into that a little bit deeper and ask more questions. But I'm delighted to hand over to Caroline to speak about the Vic Screen and Film Victoria's games funding programs.
Thank you, Craig. Hang on, video on. There we go, here I am. Welcome everyone, and thank you for taking the time out to spend with us on one of the most important sectors of our screen industry. and economy here in Victoria. We're very excited about investing further in the games area. Film Victoria, strange name to be supporting games, I agree, has been supporting the games industry for more than 25 years. And so we have a really strong foundation of talented businesses, both small and scalably large here in Victoria. And we're looking forward to supporting you all to grow this sector significantly. So that said, we have also more recently, just in May this year, launched a screen strategy called Vic Screen. I have it here even in hard copy for you, but you can find it on the Film Victoria website or on the Creative Victoria website. And games is a significant strategy element of that document. In September last year, as COVID was taking shape, we were very lucky to be supported by the Victorian government in doubling our investment in the local games industry. So the government came forward in September to do that, as well as to introduce a pilot program, which was a games project attraction fund, so-called VSI now. It was a pilot program we commenced in October and completed on the 30th of June. And we expended every cent of that grant pot of money, as well as in terms of investing in local digital games production, which was doubled as well. So it's extraordinarily successful. And then the government has backed us for another 4 years in supporting games projects. So in doing that, we're really excited to be partnering with Invest Victoria, Global Victoria, Creative Victoria, and ensuring that games is holistically supported. And we are looking at ways in which we can provide more opportunity in terms of investing in skilled Victorians to enter into the game sector as well. As part of the Vic Screen strategy, we also had a tripling of our investment in skilled screen workers, and that very much includes games, acknowledging that visual effects, animation, games, and generally film and television skill sets are starting to merge and complement each other quite well. So we will be introducing skills development opportunities as well. I suppose finally, I'd just like to say that, you know, if you have got inquiries about us, you know, games workers, about opportunities that you'll come across in terms of particular projects within companies, feel free to look us up on our website or contact myself directly via email. We all work together as one government in this forum particularly, and are really excited by the opportunity that the federal government has finally come to the party with a 30% offset. One nuance is that our games development fund is a minimum spend of $1 million. Now we are looking to reduce that down to as a minimum spend on a project, so that we can align with the federal government offset, which is the 30%, which is introduced on the 1st of July next year. So we're making those considerations, but we're open for business now and really looking forward to attracting more projects as we did over the last 6 months or so. So thank you very much, and I'll hand back to Charmaine.
Thanks so much, Caroline. All super useful information. I think I might hand over to Fran, actually, if Fran can just tell us a little bit more about Melbourne's International Games Week.
Thank you, Charmaine and Caroline. It's my pleasure. We are now into our 7th year with Melbourne International Games Week, and I'm proud to say that it has grown year on year. The very first one we staged back in 2015, we had around about 52,000. The last time we ran this event live in 2019, we tipped over 85,000. This year we are fully virtual again, but that does open up some significant opportunities to engage more significantly, I should say, with the international market for folks who can't actually get down to see us live. Although we do hope that in 2022 we will be welcoming people from across the world again. So just a couple of highlights there. We do have the only PAX outside the United States. This year, the 3-day event is completely free. We have Game Connect Asia Pacific. This is a really significant event in the calendar, bringing together industry, investors, publishers, platform holders through mechanisms like GCAP Invest. We have awards across various categories. This year, we're going to have our very first Games for Change conference, a focus on serious games production and broader games gamification. There'll be careers days. There's an international STEAM page where we'll be showcasing many of our Victorian developers. And probably the highlight for us will be a creative exchange, which will be unveiling a global first, a concatenation of music, games and fashion, coming together with a global announcement of the first luxury fashion metaverse. And showcasing 7 of our local fashion designers as they experiment with AR and VR. So put the link in there. So do check out the program. It's very exciting, and I can promise you there will be something in there for everyone. Thank you so much, and I'll hand back to Charmaine.
Thanks, Fran. That's wonderful. Cassie, if we could go to the next slide, please, before we head to our panel. So as we've all mentioned here, Victoria is globally recognised as a great place for tech companies to invest in and expand their global footprint. The state has the strongest economy in the nation and one of the strongest economies in the world. So despite COVID, Victoria retains a strong fiscal position with a solid credit rating. But let's not take my word for it, and let's shift our focus to our panel discussion that will be moderated by Caroline. Over to you, Caroline, for you to introduce our fabulous panel. Next.
Thanks, Charmaine. Now I'm going to introduce our 2 of our key leaders in Victoria, Mr. Greg Palstra and also Tom Crago. Greg is Studio General Manager, Sledgehammer Games, Melbourne. He has 20 years in and around games in terms of his professional and creative experience. He spent 12 years at Electronic Arts as a development director, where he worked at Visceral Melbourne, EA Sports in Vancouver, and at Fire Monkeys in Melbourne. He joined Sledgehammer Games in early 2020 as the Studio General Manager. He has managed the expansion of the team from 30 people to the current size of 130. So he's added a cool 100 people over the last, 10 months or something. That's a lot of interviews, Greg.
Indeed.
And he's helped the team in all disciplines to develop Call of Duty Vanguard and overseen the creation of SHG's new office space in South Melbourne. Also, I would like to say that Sledgehammer Games has been a recipient of our Film Victoria incentive funding, and we're pleased to be doing business with him. And I'll also introduce Tom Crago, who's the CEO of Keywords Australia. Tom has been around a long time as well. It's like we're ancients in this screen industry, inclusive of games. Tom is an entrepreneur, author, and artist and creator of globally renowned video game developer base in Melbourne. Tom is the CEO of Keywords Australia Pty Ltd, a new company that was established following Irish-owned Keyword Studios, acquiring 85% interest in Tantalus Media. Tom was the CEO of Tantalus at the time, having joined the company way back in 2002, so probably nearly 20 years ago. So welcome, gentlemen. Looking forward to having this chat with you. I think we're going to show a video.
One of the things that we're really excited about is just our expansion in Melbourne.
So there's this huge pool of really experienced people out there, and we see an opportunity to actually kind of build a really strong team out there in Melbourne that's an extension of the main team that we have here in Foster City.
We've had a really small, kind of really talented, tight team that has focused on really important things over the years, and now our plan is to go expand that tenfold and we're really excited about building Melbourne up to be a true AAA studio.
We believe Melbourne is an attractive destination, that it's vibrant in terms of its culture and what it has to offer people outside of the workplace. But we also believe it's a magnet for really great talent. And again, we've already seen that in terms of people we already have working for us in Melbourne. So we can't wait to attract new people into this team.
It's a great team. I think we have a great chemistry. We've worked on a total of, wow, maybe 4 different calls of duty. Aaron said that we're gonna just go full studio in Melbourne. I'm like, wow, that's amazing.
Melbourne represents for us the perfect combination of a few things: diversity, talent, culture, and lifestyle. So we couldn't be more excited to go into Melbourne in a big way.
So the idea of having people who come in and do an entirely different function, who just think differently, is actually really exciting because it pushes you to think beyond your normal realm. I think that's awesome.
Planning to do is get them a new space, somewhere they can move into, somewhere that they can feel proud of, and somewhere that's going to be in keeping with the rest of the amazing facilities and the amazing talent that we've got at Sledgehammer Games.
How are you going to beat that video, Greg? You've got to top that. But I suppose hiring 100 people in the space of 2 seconds is one thing to feel proud about. But tell us about the motivation behind choosing Melbourne as the location for Sledgehammer.
Yeah, sure. So, Sledge has been around since about 2009, as you saw Andy and Aaron speak about delivering against Call of Duty, starting with Advanced Warfare as lead studio, and then World War II in 2017, and now we're all frantically building Vanguard, which is due for release on November 5th. About 450 people worldwide, 300 plus in Foster City, and we're now at about 140 in Melbourne, so we're still continuing to grow. And we've actually got a brand new studio in Toronto as well. So a Call of Duty game takes a huge number of people. There's probably about 2,000 people involved, in every release of Call of Duty. And there's massively stiff competition, in California and Foster City for those resources. So other game studios, Amazon, Google, all those places competing. So as Andy mentioned in the video, Melbourne, has a rich and deep games history. We had multiple large AAA studios, especially prior to the global financial crisis. And when those studios, left that period, the talent didn't go away. It moved into smaller studios or into indie organizations or other industries as well. And some of them went overseas. So recognizing that talent pool's there and that Melbourne is such a great draw card for all the reasons that were mentioned, Andy and Aaron decided to really extend the small success of the engineering group that we had from that 6 people that we had to go into a full-fledged studio. So we've been working for the last 2 years to grow from that 6 to about 140 now, with plans to get up to the 180, maybe 200 mark over the remainder of the year and into next year. And I think that we were greenlit with the idea of bringing in 50 people, and we're now at 140. So we've well exceeded expectations, and we're delivering strongly at quality across all disciplines that feed into a Call of Duty product. So a really strong start for the Melbourne studio.
Greg, where are you finding the talent? I mean, expanding that quickly and also requiring, I suppose, mid-range leads and more junior staff and talent. Where have you tapped into that in Melbourne?
Yeah, so a lot of the initial early hiring was done via referral. We'd all worked in industry for a long time. So I think out of the first 40 people we hired, only one was done through traditional recruiting methods. So we leveraged our networks, and just all the people that we knew in Melbourne were able to bring in all the best people that they knew. But beyond that, now that we've hit a larger mass, we noticed that there were some gaps in the skills that we needed that we couldn't quite meet for AAA games across all disciplines. So we've been utilising international advertising quite heavily, and have actually worked closely with government to expedite some of our visa processes. Like, we were doing all this through COVID, right? So it was quite difficult to entice people, and then once we had attracted them, to get them through the travel exemptions and visa program was quite difficult in cases. So worked really closely with government to understand the visas that were available to us, and the government, state and federal, has been really helpful in providing letters of support to get those people across the line for us, and also just how to work within those systems, like getting travel exemptions for people that then expedited the visa process. So that enabled us to bring in some of the senior and lead talent that we needed to unlock hiring at those mid and junior levels across the board. And now we're expanding our programs to work closely with some of the universities and institutions that were mentioned earlier, Monash, Swinburne, RMIT, AIE, some that we're working on co-op and intern programs through into next year, and bringing in that next wave of junior talent, and really becoming part of a strengthening ecosystem and that critical mass of studios that's starting to build back in Victoria.
Fantastic, Greg. So really, the government, both federal and state, are tracking you through not just the skills uptake and the employment uptake, but also on the basis of incentivising your business, incentivising your projects, and also investing in independent, suppose Victorian-led content. That's really great.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of your office accommodation and the facilitation of that, how did that work for you?
Yeah, so really early on when we were scouting for locations, Andy, our COO, was introduced to government representatives, and they facilitated a tour of Melbourne and really gave him confidence in the quality of the facilities that were available. One of the buildings that we visited through that period is the one we signed the lease for. So we've now got a studio down in South Melbourne that's almost ready for habitation, and things have slowed down with COVID, obviously, but we've got about room for 106, I think, in the current floor, and a further expansion of another 60 workstations in the second floor. And then that came about through the consultation with local government for Andy and Aaron in the early stages of exploring the city.
And that was work you did with Invest Victoria?
That's right.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm going to introduce Tom now. Tom, turn your video on. Your experiences in expanding are very different to Greg's. Tell us about Tantalus and the Keywords Australia that has come into being.
Absolutely. Well, we were already here in Melbourne. Tantalus was established in 1994, which makes us one of the oldest game developers in the world, formerly independent, now part of the Keywords global group. And I think we have to acknowledge that we've been making video games in Melbourne for a very long time, almost since the game development industry emerged, all the way back to Beam Software and Melbourne House. And Tantalus was very much part of that tradition. So we were formed when a few people left Beam Software. They came and established Tantalus at the same time that several other studios, Taurus, Wicked Witch, and others who are still standing here in Melbourne, were established. We maintained our independence throughout, a very diverse company, always working with the Victorian government until the point earlier this year where we were mostly acquired by Keywords, who themselves had a look around the region to determine where they'd establish their base. And after a lot of fruitful conversations with the Victorian government and with me, settled on Melbourne and the acquisition of Tantalus.
So there is a really great base of locally owned and operated Victorian games businesses that have been here now for multiple decades. And that's an incredible strength more generally in terms of the ecosystem. And also there are a lot of smaller Victorian companies that are producing extraordinary creative works, like Untitled Goose Game as an example, which is extremely successfully global. I'm going to throw to a clip of the work that you've got which is on the Nintendo Switch. Is that right? Is that what I'm doing? Show a clip of our work.
Yeah, it's from our most recent release. We did the remaster of The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword for Nintendo.
Pretty epic work there, Tom. Congratulations. How did the government support you in getting that project happening?
Well, I suppose that's more just the legacy of our studio. So hard-earned over many, many years. We developed our first game with Nintendo on Game Boy Advance, so 15 plus years ago. Interestingly, the first time that I went to Nintendo was part of the Victorian government delegation many, many years ago. There have been support from the government for those sorts of trips, those sorts of outreach type expeditions to meet with international publishers. I think the key word, Caroline, is ecosystem. It's partly that support. It's a lot to do with the educational institutions that we have here. And more than anything, and Greg made the point very well, that when you're looking to grow, we've got this great network of people here who've been in the industry for a long time, people we know, people we've worked with for a long time. And that's a product of all these studios that have emerged over many years, but also the educational institutions here too, with whom we partner very closely.
And Tom, what's the vision for growth now that Keywords is here, it's expanding? What do you see the future as being?
Well, I'm not going to set a target of doing it faster than Greg, because I think that's going to be impossible. But look, we're pretty ambitious here. We're looking in part to grow through acquisition as well. So we have our organic growth plans, but Keywords are very, very invested in the region. There's a lot of optimism around the games industry at large at present. Obviously, the offset coming next year federally will be a great support. So we're growing as fast as we can while retaining, I suppose, a relatively sensible approach to ensure that we don't overheat the machine.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you very much, Greg, as well, for your participation. I'm going to ask Craig a question now. If Craig could jump online, I wanted to just ask you about what your department does and how you've approved a significant fund to attract major studios to Victoria, and how do you see that complementing the DGTO? Let me get my acronyms right, and also nobody's going to understand what that is, nor do I, so you better explain it for me as well as everybody else.
Thanks, Caroline, and we do love an acronym here as well. And I popped my jumper on as well because it's a little bit of a chilly morning in Melbourne, but nice and sunny. Yeah, so just quickly, in terms of Invest Victoria, we're part of the state government. Our remit is to attract, secure and help grow international companies into Victoria. And we're very fortunate to have quite a large and highly experienced team, both here in Victoria as well, and also Victorian government trade and investment offices overseas, over those 23 offices. We offer quite a wide range of supports and services, to stress that those services are free and confidential. And then it's everything from the kind of journey of the investment, from building the business case, information on market entry, R&D capabilities, the labour market, available skills and talent, introductions to potential clients, partners, industry, local suppliers, and we mentioned some of these things already, but site identification, help around planning, regulatory approvals, assisting levels of government, including financial assistance, any available funding around in certain programs, and ongoing investor support as well, which is key. So we don't just say well done and that's it. So in terms of how we see support alongside the DGTO, which is a digital games tax offset. So that's, as I mentioned earlier, that's the federal incentive. So that's already making Australia a very attractive, more attractive destination for games companies. But Invest Victoria is now looking to accelerate even further that investment with our 3-year strategy to make Victoria more attractive. So we'll provide, so that support from us, that incentive is in advance of the tax offset, because that's only starts in July of next year. So we're looking to help companies establish here and ready for that offset, so they're able to apply for it and ready for it. And actually, the team will commit to work with companies closely across a number of ways to help them do that and advise that. So with our incentive and the government tax offset, which is a total support of, I believe, $18.8 million over 4 years, it makes it even more attractive to come. And there's a window of opportunity now, to come now. So that's the call to action.
And I think too that there are state-based funds that will support projects too. So, you know, it's not waiting. You're absolutely right, Craig. We cannot wait for next July. The opportunity is now. The opportunity is to invest in Victoria and to invest in the amazing talent, by which we know we are the leading games sector in this country, in Australia. Not only that, we're the most livable city. We have a lot to offer. So thank you very much, Craig. I'm going to bring back Greg and Tom, if I may, and ask them a couple more questions. Now, bear with me, because I feel like this might be the Guinness Book of World Records longest question to ask you both. So hold your breath, people. Here I go. Victoria has led the games industry with some excellent technology. FMOD's sound effects and authoring tool is used by Bethesda. I can't even pronounce that word. Come on, Tom, help me out.
Bethesda, yeah.
Thank you. Disney, Activision, Tencent, and many others. Zero Latency's free roaming VR has gone global. More recently, the listing of Playside Studios on the ASX, the announcement that Nacon Studios in France acquired Big Ant Studios for $55 million, coupled with your own experiences, suggests there's now a level of maturity in the industry. I would say we already had that maturity before, but we're building on that. Could you both comment on that very long question for all of our benefits? Thank you.
Want me to go, Tom?
Go for it, mate.
Yeah, I think for me, the things that really create a great, environment for a studio, for Sledgehammer in particular, it's been a talent play. Like when I did similar work for Electronic Arts, I think there was more focus on us being a low cost center versus the US. But really, this time the recognition has been that the industry needs to find talent, and they need to find it wherever they can. So as I spoke to before, having the institutions, the organizations that are feeding into that space, and having such a large and rich history of games development, that's what's really made it possible for us to do what we've done in the short time we've done it. Just leveraging on that industry experience, that passion for games, and that skill set that's percolating around the state and the country. And I think as we establish, more and larger studios again, in Victoria, it makes it an ever more attractive option. I think one of the questions that I get sometimes from really senior talent when we try to bring them here is I say, look, it looks like a really interesting opportunity. I'd love to come and work for you. If it doesn't work out, what else is available? You know, if they're looking at bringing their families and relocating. So if we've got multiple studios all thriving here, all feeding off each other with different projects, different times, and creating that real, just that weight of industry here, we're going to become an ever increasing draw card. And I think that helps everyone involved.
Absolutely. And look, it's certainly the case that Melbourne's a hot spot now for game development, but I guess it's an overnight success that's been 30 years in the making. We really have built up to this point, and it is through talent. You know, we were good at it from the start, making games. We got better at it, and then institutions emerged around that to help nurture it and to grow it. So the success story has that kind of core element around there just being a critical mass of people here who are good at what they do.
And I think testament to the games sector here in Victoria, in Melbourne, is that the GFC changed the dynamic of the ecosystem, but gee, it made our talent thrive in our originating IP, didn't it? In terms of independent gaming, the fact that it's been a global success, and that has only strengthened us further. So in terms of that balance of AAA, studio-based investment in the state, as well as our extraordinary talent in the ability to conceptualize our own ideas and contribute those to game development, is a very unique strength, I think, here in Melbourne. Next question. Could you outline the elements that make a great environment for games production? Is it the talent pool, the investment landscape? Why are these important, and how do they contribute to making a successful studio?
I think I sort of answered that one in the previous question. So yeah, so maybe Tom's got some input on that one.
It's almost like all three. Checkbox D.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think stability is really important, and it's interesting thinking about a lot of developers who perhaps worked for a medium-sized company in Australia. They've gone off and either started or been involved in indie studio production. And a lot of those folks are interested in coming back to bigger studios. And, you know, Greg's hired a lot of them. We're seeing more and more of them to give people the opportunity to work on something big. And obviously there's nothing bigger than Call of Duty, and there's not much bigger than The Legend of Zelda. It's really attractive. And the fact that Melbourne has, I mean, we make Call of Duty, we make The Legend of Zelda. It's pretty cool, you know, and that offers people not just the opportunity to work on an excellent property with a group of really talented people, but it gives them this great sense of security and stability that they're part of something bigger that isn't going away. And we're certainly not going away here in Melbourne.
And it's a wonderful way to really uplift skills as well, because of the complexity and scale of those projects. Certainly that's an advantage. With your international experience, how do you believe Melbourne and its ecosystem rates against other international games, destinations and territories?
Yeah, Melbourne's so rich. I think Tom mentioned before that, or maybe it was you, Carolyn, but post GFC and the exodus of some of the large studios, the talent didn't go away. It really thrived. So there's that, I think, Australian attitude of, you know, just getting on with it, and they really demonstrated their capability. So I think the talent pool is incredibly rich. The ecosystem is, it's a different flavor from North America or Canada, where I had a lot of experience, but the talent is there, you know, and the games industry is thriving. I think in terms of the individual levels, like I've worked very closely with hiring and building teams in multiple locations, you know, here in North America, and the talent here is second to none. We have a great talent pool. I can, you know, honestly say that I've hired, you know, so it's actually some of the best engineers that we have at Sledgehammer Games are in the office, you know, well, at home at the moment, but under our wings in Melbourne. The talent pool is fantastic, and I think the vibrancy, the independence, and the ingenuity of the local industry is just world class.
Thanks, Greg. Tom, any more from you?
Well, I was just reflecting on being in Montreal in the mid-90s. So this is early doors for Montreal as a hub, again on a Victorian government trade mission. And we're at Ubisoft, and there were just a handful of people there. They were still unpacking the computers to get set up. And you look at how rapidly that happened from nothing in Montreal. And in Melbourne, we kind of already had this ecosystem from back in the 70s. You know, we've been doing it. So we've kind of got this quite authentic pathway that we've taken to get where we are now. And it's kind of ready to be turbocharged, I think. And that's what we're kind of trying to do. And the more the merrier.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Well, thank you again, Tom and Greg. I'm going to throw back to Charmaine now, who is going to moderate the Q&A session. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Caroline, Tom, Greg and Craig. We really appreciate your perspective, especially as subject matter experts, right, who are living and breathing this every single day. I will open up the floor to questions. I think we have a couple in the Q&A box, which I'll pull up now. And there have been a couple that people who weren't able to attend actually emailed to me, so I can mention those as well in case people are interested in the answers. So the first one there about Invest Victoria and the support that they offer, I think maybe hopefully Craig covered most of that. I think, yep, excellent. Thank you, Craig. But certainly we can follow up. There's a question there about how nimble the state government is in responding to inquiries. And if we wanted to establish a new studio in Victoria, what's the time frame from the commencement of discussions? Certainly from my perspective, I've worked with companies anywhere, you know, who are ready to launch within a month to companies who I've worked with for 2 or 3 years. So really, you know, I think the government is very flexible, and myself, I'm very flexible to working to what people's expansion strategy looks like. So it's really more about having a discussion and how we can help, you know, in whatever way. And it just takes longer sometimes for people, depending on what their major drivers are for expansion. So don't, you know, there is no right or wrong answer for that. There is no short or long term. So really it's, you know, the earlier the better for us. We like to engage in a conversation so we can really identify, you know, the best ways to support people. But by all means, you know, there is no time frame too short, really. But yeah, certainly email me, anybody, if you have anything further on that particular point, and we can hone in a little bit further. We were talking a little bit about talent. Somebody's asked, you mentioned there's a large number of unis and around 1,000 graduates a year. How responsive are they with their curriculum and working with industry? This is probably a question best handled by Fran, I think. Fran, if you're happy to take that one.
Sure, thanks, Charmaine. There is quite a close association between our tertiary sector and industry. More recently, our peak body, IG, brought together a group of developers and a group of educators because there is a perception that there's a disconnect between what's being taught and what industry require in terms of skills. However, on the positive side, dialogue like this is just outstanding and does lead to an exploration of where the gaps might be. We've got a number of studios here that work directly through student engagement. I'm thinking of obviously Tom with Tantalus has had a good student engagement project. Greg certainly outlined that in his conversation. Samurai Punk, Big Ant, Dark Shadows, they're just a handful that engage directly with student bodies. At the Arcade, for example, there's been a long-standing student hot desking arrangement. We mentioned Swinburne University earlier. They have a setup at the Arcade where students participate on a weekly basis as part of their coursework. So it's an exciting time to see that bringing together and exploring those commonalities. So, you know, the university programs here or the tertiary sector are certainly acknowledged as being extremely strong, which bodes well for the next generation of developers.
Excellent. Thank you, Fran. Just another question here on the incentives front. Can I benefit from both the Commonwealth and the state incentive? I know the answer to be yes, but I'm certainly not the best person to talk about this. Craig, Caroline, maybe handing over to both of you for a couple of responses there.
I'm happy take this, Craig, if you like, it is a simultaneous process. So what we would see when the federal government incentive comes into play on the 1st of July next year, the Film Victoria project incentives will still exist. So you can double benefit. Essentially, you would get 30% from the federal government and anywhere up to 10% of your expenditure within Victoria on that project. It is an extraordinary deal for international companies to be investing in Australia as of the 1st of July next year. So you've got to get your footprint in now. And I hasten to say that we are one of the most beneficial incentive packages in Australia at the moment. And certainly New South Wales and Sydney do not invest in games projects right now. We invest both in local games development and in attracting games projects to the state, and having doubled that in spring from last year. So it's a simultaneous process. And we have been doing this with film and television projects for many, many years. So the 30% federal government incentive is mirrored on the Hollywood attraction fund from the federal government. So what happens there is that the state comes in first, and then the federal government processes the location offset for a Hollywood-based project. And then there are also funds available for locally generated IP. So the same will go with that 30% fund as well. So really beneficial for working here in Victoria with us.
Excellent. Thanks, Caroline. And I think too, like, I know I've been working with a number of companies, you know, when it comes to incentives that are available, you know, Craig, that you mentioned up until that 30 June next year. Do you want to add a little bit of colour to that, Craig, around the, you know, the job creation grant-based financial incentive that's available as well?
Yeah, and that's Caroline kind of summing up the answers to that one as well. Just only to add in terms of the incentive through Invest Victoria is based on job creation, and that's on the number of jobs and the particular skills attached to those jobs. So we'd welcome a conversation with companies to work on that a bit further. So it's project by project, really, in terms of the quantums and just understanding a bit what the plans are for those businesses in terms of when they set up. But yeah, just to add that, you know, we actually encourage companies to look at the offset as well as incentives from state government as well. So it's all a good thing, positive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I'm more than happy to have those conversations with companies as well. There was one question that came through on my email that I'd like to flag too regarding support for immigration. But Cassie, if I could just get you to bring up that last slide there, just because it has my contact details and Amelia's contact details as well, just so that people can jot them down and we can reach out, you know, if there are any further questions after this. But I did get a question around immigration support and what the Victorian government can do. Obviously, that is a federally run process, but what we can certainly do is add letters of endorsement for people who are looking to come into Australia, and we can certainly you know, support in that way. We found it to be very useful. So people who are looking to come into the country, you know, where it may take 3-6 months to get, you know, a visa to come in, we've been able to really truncate that time frame down to 4 to 6 weeks in some cases. So that's something which I would urge people to approach us about. If, you know, it's quite normal, I think, for people to want to come in and see a place and, you know, to have somebody on the ground to help create your culture, you know, for your company, you know, before you actually start that expansion. But there are lots of weird and wonderful ways we can support. I've also helped people to get their dogs into the country and that sort of thing. So all those important things. But I'm very conscious of everybody's time. So I want to thank everybody for their time today and for joining us. Did any of my fellow panelists, do you have any final comments before we wrap up today?
My only comment is that it might be confusing when we're talking about multiple Victorian government entities, but to reassure everyone that we work seamlessly together and have excellent communication amongst our agencies. with multiple benefits. So we always come together to assess an opportunity and to make sure that we expedite it and provide the best service possible.
Yeah, that's a really important point, Caroline. Like, I should mention, we have actually people from 4 different Victorian government departments here today. And, you know, as someone who's worked in this job for the last 4 years, I can honestly say that in the games and the film industry, this is, you know, one of the places where we do genuinely work really well together. So thank you everybody for joining. I don't think if there are any other comments to be made, please feel free to reach out to myself or Amelia. You have our contact details there. We look forward to continuing the conversation and look forward to helping you into Melbourne. Thanks everyone.